So today we have George Wiseman back with us again, which I'm super excited about. This is the second part in the series that we have done on the interviews about the AquaCure. And we do have the original beginning of that in the first podcast interview. So we will link that in the show notes so that you guys can go back and refer to that. Welcome to Renewed Hope Women's Wellness. I'm Happy Sperling, wife, mom of 7, board-certified holistic health practitioner, and owner of Renewed Hope Nutrition Center. After years of searching for the answers to my own health issues, I grew tired of always being told there was nothing wrong when I knew something wasn't right. If you're searching for answers too, this is the place for you. Whether you're a college student, mom, businesswoman, going through menopause, or anything in between, I'm here to empower you and teach you how to become your own health advocate. I'm here to renew your hope and let you know you are not alone. So let's start this journey together. George, if you don't mind to kind of recap for us a little bit about that so that they'll know what they want to tap into to get the full interview.
Okay, that sounds good. And then we can get into some questions that people have been asking, and that is really good. I love answering questions. So if you go to the aquacure.life website, you'll see About Me page, which will give a lot of the background of where I came from and kind of the philosophy that I ended up developing over time and how I kind of got into the AquaCure and what the AquaCure has done for me and why you see me inhaling the Brown's gas even as we speak, because every time I sit down somewhere I put this on. It's done so many wonders for me that I can hardly believe it. So originally I was in Brown's gas. I'll skip over a bunch of the beginning and just kind of get into the Brown's gas as a fuel saving device. So I ask people, what if there's a technology that can save fuel, 25 to 50% of fuel, help plants grow 3 times faster in ground and 10 times faster in hydroponics, replace torch fuel gas like acetylene and MAP gas, you can replace it directly and have a better combustion flame, and help people heal from virtually every ailment known to man. What if there was a technology like that? And what if you could do it in your own home relatively inexpensively? So that's the technology we're talking about with Brown's gas.
Wow.
And originally I was selling fuel savers. I'd still like to be doing that, but 100% of my time is now being taken up with the AquaCure type machines because there's just such a big demand out there and it's helping so many people. Then I got into what I call the water torches, and that's large electrolyzers that made like 1,200 liters an hour. The AquaCure AC50 makes 50 liters per hour, so you can see there's a big difference in the volume of gas, but that's what it takes to properly fuel an acetylene torch. That then they could do all the cutting and everything at 2% of the cost of using acetylene, and a lot more convenient in various ways, and a better cut, that sort of thing. So and that's all I use in my own shop, by the way. That's one of the reasons I actually got into Brown's gas, is because I heard that Brown's gas could weld tungsten to titanium and titanium to plastic. And as an inventor, I build things that aren't on the shelf, so I learn about these various welding techniques and assembly and ways of doing with tools. So I wanted that in my own shop. Turns out that's a myth. There was quite a bit of myths about Brown's gas, but it does do a lot of amazing things. So one of my water torch customers in 1996 thought of bubbling Brown's gas in water and then applied it to a melanoma on his forehead, and the skin cancer was gone in 3 weeks. He just wetted a cotton ball in a plastic cap and just kept re-wetting it several times a day. And in 3 weeks' time, his skin was entirely gone, healed from the melanoma, which I didn't believe him at the time. But I told my customers, which I had several thousand of fuel savers and water torches and that sort of thing out there, of this potential health application of Brown's gas. And then testimonials started to come in as people tried it. But it took from 1996 to 2005 for them to convince me to bubble water in and start trying it myself. And I haven't been sick since. I've had sniffles and a headache twice, but that's the extent of my sickness in the last, what would that be, approaching 20 years. So, but that was just drinking the Brown's gas bubbled water, which is good. And so hydrogen-rich water, there's nothing wrong with that. But people were asking me if they could inhale the gas. And here you're seeing me inhale it, of course. But at the time, I was used to dealing with an explosive gas. A mixture of 2 times hydrogen to 1 time oxygen, they call it stoichiometric, is the most explosive gas on the planet. And I didn't want people inhaling a potentially explosive mixture. And then in December of 2015. Okay, get my dates sorted out there properly. December of 2015, a customer sent me a video of a Korean hydrogen bar, which was, they had people lined up in comfortable chairs and they were inhaling. And it suddenly hit me that all you have to do is keep the hydrogen content in the inhaled mixture under 4.7%. And since then, it's been determined a therapeutically effective mixture is 2% hydrogen in the inhaled mixture, which is what I'm inhaling right now. And it's non-explosive. It can't explode. There isn't enough hydrogen in the air to support combustion. So perfectly safe, therapeutically optimal, because as you are inhaling, your blood gets saturated with the hydrogen, just like the hydrogen-rich water. When you bubble the gas in there, it gets saturated with the hydrogen. And then you exhale any excess. So you can never have too much in that, just like carbon dioxide, your body gets rid of the excess. But why put in more than you need? It's just wasteful and doesn't give you any additional benefit. So this is why we're inhaling the 2% mixture, and it's safe. But due to the fact that my late wife was very ill at the time, and I was a 24/7 caretaker and couldn't be away from her for more than 20 or 30 minutes at a time, she couldn't even roll over in bed without assistance, and I would carry her to the bathroom and things like that. I didn't have time to experiment. In fact, my business had pretty much gone to nothing at that point, and we were about $300,000 in debt because I was trying everything I could to heal this wonderful woman. So in the end, in March of 2016, she died due to complications of the severe lupus that she had, and possibly decisions that she had made. I have to admit that she didn't want to go with the allopathic medicine at all, and we were trying everything we could that was non-allopathic, and she didn't even know she had lupus until 10 days before she died, because she hadn't gone in for any of the allopathic testing or anything. So we didn't actually even know what we were fighting. We were just trying to mitigate the symptoms as best we could. In any case, and there were things that were working, but not fast enough. In any case, I then was in deep grief, and I didn't care if I lived or died, so I decided I'd inhale some Brown's gas to see if it was safe. And I videotaped myself at that point, and you can still see that videotape where on my YouTube channel, where I inhaled Brown's gas for the first time. And I videotaped myself because if anything went wrong, there'd be evidence of my craziness. So it turned out really well, and I didn't sleep at all that night. My body, when it got that big influx of hydrogen, it wasn't like a coffee buzz, but I was absolutely wide awake and alert all night. Now, the wife I have now, I've since remarried. When she inhaled first time, about 15 minutes at about 6:30 at night, she had the best night's sleep she could remember. So one of the things I tell people is you have no idea what's going to happen when you start inhaling, because your body decides where the gas goes and what happens and that kind of thing. So I then went from March of 2016, I went for 2 or 3 months, and I had nothing but good things happening. And again, you can go up and see the testimonial I have there. And so I decided, okay, I will recommend it to people, and I told people how to inhale safely. And then testimonials really started to pour in, and a couple of months after that, a woman wrote in and said that she had lupus, and her lupus symptoms were absolutely gone in 3 weeks' time. So I and my late wife had fought this disease for like 7 or 8 years, and she got worse and worse. She lost her eyesight, she lost her hair, she lost her ability to roll over in bed. Her quality of life went to almost nothing. And here I am, an expert in Brown's gas, been working with Brown's gas since 1986. I was told by God, essentially, given the message that it was for a health application in 1996, didn't really start even bubbling in water till 9 years later in 2005, and here I had the ability, this wonderful gas. I probably could have completely reversed the symptoms and still had that beautiful woman on the planet with me. So in her death, my grief was bad. It was, I don't know how people survive it. I really don't. If I hadn't started inhaling the Brown's gas, I don't think I would have. And I think there are a lot of people who follow their spouses into the night, and I can understand why. But when I started inhaling the Brown's gas, one of the things that happened was that my libido came back. And, okay, I was grieving, and I wanted sex. So it's really difficult to be too despondent and not care if you live or die when you want sex. That's kind of the way it works out. So it was only 3 or 4 months after my late wife died that I started dating again because I was interested in women. And it goes on from there. I'm remarried. So it really did save my life in many different ways. There were a bunch of ailments I was living with that I didn't even realize. I just thought I was getting older and that was the way it was. But if you look at me as I am now, I look like I did 20 years ago in my pictures, and I have places where I show that. It's reversed my biological age, at the same time as gotten rid of a whole bunch of ailments that I had, and given me a reason to live. And when this woman wrote in that her lupus symptoms were gone, now at that point I was kind of dating, but I didn't have anybody in my life, and I literally fell down on the floor. Literally, it laid me out. I couldn't even breathe, thinking that here I had this thing. We spent so much money and time and effort trying to find something that would help her lupus. And I'm not saying it would have. I think it would have, but I don't know for certain. But everything I've learned since with other people who have had lupus too, 100% of them have had complete remission and return to health. And not just that autoimmune disease, but virtually every other one. Mm-hmm. So I think that these diseases are caused mostly by or exacerbated by a lack of hydrogen. And the Brown's gas gives the hydrogen plus the electrically expanded water. We can talk about it in a minute. In any case, as I laid there on the floor crying myself out, I suddenly realized that this was a God-given gift that I needed to share with as many people as possible to make it worth my wife's passing, to make her death count, to help as many people as possible not go through what we did. And I have been able to help many thousands of people since, and every single one matters. Everyone who writes in a testimonial makes my day. So don't be shy, write them in.
Wow.
So that's why I'm passionate to help people. Now, we can quickly get into what Brown's gas is, because there's a lot of misinformation out there. And I can send links to videos that I've done that say that, not only what it is, but why it's better than pure hydrogen. So there's a lot of people out there inhaling pure hydrogen, which is fine, it's helpful, and what I call oxyhydrogen, which is a mixture of hydrogen and oxygen, which again is fine. It's just about as helpful as the pure hydrogen, maybe even a little bit more helpful than the pure hydrogen, but it's not Brown's gas. Oxyhydrogen is not Brown's gas. Brown's gas has an additional component that we call electrically expanded water, and it's significant. So what it is water that has soaked up electrons until it's become a gaseous form of water that is not water vapor or steam. It's a plasma. So it's a negatively charged cold plasma. We call EXW, or electrically expanded water. Those electrons in that water are biocompatible, available. So when you inhale, you're inhaling this cold plasma, which is giving your body electrons. So in addition to the hydrogen, which I liken to bricks, it's a building block of life, but it's inert. It doesn't do anything by itself. Mm-hmm. So if you have a pile of bricks in the woods and you come back in 100 years, you're not going to expect to see a brick house. If you have a brick house, you come back after a period of time, it could be a pile of bricks, but not the other way around. This is entropy. It takes energy and intelligence to turn that pile of bricks into a brick house, and to maintain a brick house too. So your body has the intelligence. Our bodies are absolutely amazing in how they heal themselves and how they maintain themselves. But they need nutrition and energy to do that. So it has intelligence. The hydrogen is your major macronutrient, in my opinion. You've got 62% hydrogen, 24% oxygen, 12% carbon, and 2% everything else in your body by volume. So this is not by weight, because hydrogen is very light. So people that go by weight, it's going to be a lot lower percentage. But by volume, what makes you is those percentages. So your body needs the hydrogen in virtually every chemical process that goes on, either directly or indirectly. It needs the hydrogen, and it's your building block. We're all built around hydrocarbons. I tend to point out, if you're 12% carbon and 62% hydrogen, wouldn't you call yourself a hydrogen-based life form instead of a carbon-based life form? Just these things about science amuse me. All right, we get back to, it's important to have the hydrogen. You get your electrically expanded water. It's not the oxyhydrogen. So I don't bother with any of the hydrogen bottles or hydrogen tablets or anything like that because I go straight for the most therapeutic value. That's what the Brown's gas is. Okay, so there's a good outline for people if they haven't watched the first. And so let's get into some questions.
Yeah, and on that too, George, I just wanted to mention, because of course it's very trending to talk about hydrogen water bottles, and I actually do have an Echo Plus 2 or whatever, because that was the one I found that had some research. Just because I thought I'm not always able to use the machine just because of life and being able to do that. So it's something that digestively I can add that in. So I think there's some benefits to it. And then we also drink the bubbled water from your machine. I had one client that had bought, the AquaCure and then also the bottle, and he said, well, I was researching that the water that's bubbled in the AquaCure is only going to be, is it 2.5 parts per million? And he had found that maybe with this particular water bottle you can run it for electrolysis for 4.5 parts per million. So I know that your machine being designed for inhaling hydrogen, and he and I talked about that there would be a difference. But in your opinion, and that was kind of the debate that he and I were talking about, is it better to have the higher parts per million? Because you and I talked in the other interview that more is not always better. So is it just as efficient to say, hey, we have an AquaCure machine and we're just going to, drink that bubbled water, or would it be beneficial to have something that was just a higher parts per million?
Okay, so the first part of the question or the commentary there had to do with timing. You have a hydrogen bottle because you don't often sit in one place, so you can't do this. There's various ways that people get around that. One way is with a long hose so they can do their chores around the house and still be inhaling while they're actually moving around and doing things. Another way is to sleep with it. There's a lot of people that sleep with it, and some people put it on a trolley so they can move it from the living room to the kitchen to the bedroom if necessary. So wherever they are, they can have their Brown's gas. But people really do need somewhere around 7 or 8 hours of sleep. And if you have serious ailments like cancer or Parkinson's or Alzheimer's or any of these things, that virtually everything that gets help with the Brown's gas one way or another. But if you have serious ailments, you need the hours. Because once your blood gets saturated, more doesn't help. So longer is what actually ends up being more therapeutic, and giving your body the time for the hydrogen to sink right into the tissues and right into the cell, or even into the DNA. But that takes time, hours at a time. So this is important for people to understand therapeutically. Drinking, now we get to the hydrogen-rich, the bottles that make the hydrogen-rich water. That's good. And if you're drinking water, it's good to get the hydrogen-rich. Personally, I like to drink the water that also has the electrically expanded water in it, not just the hydrogen.
Okay.
So again, the tablets and the bottles don't give that, and yes, they do, and they're also very convenient. They don't have lye mixture in them that you have to deal with or anything like that. You can carry them around, and so it's very convenient, and it's better than nothing. It really is. There's nothing against hydrogen in any of the modalities. People should be getting at least that. But if you inhale for 12 seconds, you get as much hydrogen in your body as drinking hydrogen-rich water at 1.6 parts per million. Okay, so 4 parts per million is a little more than double that. So breathe for 24 seconds. You get as much as drinking the bottle of hydrogen-rich water. So less than half a minute, the inhalation puts that much hydrogen into your bloodstream. So when it comes down to it, the hydrogen-rich water is a smaller component, and if you look at my testimonial, you'll see that. When I started drinking essentially Brown's gas-rich water, which is hydrogen-rich water plus the electrically expanded water, in 2005, and I haven't been sick since, that pretty much was the only thing that happened. I was still losing my hair. I was still white. I'm now gray. My mustache has gotten color back in it. If you see my YouTube, you'll see that all this is pure white in 2016, and you can see it's done that. I lost the crow's feet on my eyes. Mm-hmm. I lost my tinnitus. I still get a bit of a hissing if I'm really under stress, but I have. The psoriasis is gone, my warts are gone, my neuropathies were gone. All these things happened after I started inhaling. There was about 10 or 11 different things that happened after I started inhaling, and my body could really start to heal. So my answer is that hydrogen bottles and tablets, people should be doing at least that. And if you can't afford AquaCure, at least get started on that. It'll start your body healing, your body, and that's the one thing about the electrically expanded water giving the electrons, is that people that are ill have often used up their energy reserves. And their energy generation systems in their body have become compromised, so they can't make as much energy or electrons in their body for the healing process to happen. So when you're inhaling with the brown gas, you're getting not only the building block of life, being the hydrogen, you're getting that energy that's bypassing all those things that aren't working as well as they could, and that's where your upward spiral starts to happen, because you're getting the energy needed to heal as well as the nutrition. So hopefully that answered those questions.
Yeah, it did. And I think understanding for me now that, you're getting the EXW, that expanded water compound with your, with the water from your machine, then you're not getting that with anything else. I mean, it makes sense. I do think, like you said, if that's all someone can do, it's something, but why not do the better if you can, and get the most effect from it. So on that, kind of along that line, what are the benefits? And I know there's not as many scientific reviewed studies and all these like double-blind clinical placebo trials or anything like that on inhaling hydrogen. There's actually quite a few, which I was kind of surprised on NIH, that have kind of tapped into this for different metabolic diseases and even mental health. But if you were to say, inhaling hydrogen, you just said 12 seconds. I mean, wow, what you're going to get in a very short period of time. But do you feel like there are benefits to like ingesting the hydrogen water that would impact the body differently through the gut, as far as inhaling could do the same thing? Or do you feel like that combining those, they would have different implications? Or do you feel like that kind of washes out if you inhale?
Okay. Excellent question. And I, of course, didn't cover that yet. Okay. There are ailments that the drinking the hydrogen-rich water mitigate even better than inhaling. Okay. That's number one. And you'll get people out there citing those studies who are selling hydrogen-rich water bottles and stuff, saying it's better than inhaling. Okay. And that's the reason, because they cherry-pick just those studies. On the other hand, of our balance here, there are studies that the inhaling works better than on some ailments than drinking the hydrogen-rich water. So it turns out that if you do both, they're synergistic, and you address everything. So my recommendation is to do both, and with the AquaCure, we're the only brown gas machine in the world that makes your drinking water at the same time as you're inhaling. So it kind of saves time there. Well, it's a safety feature just kind of built right in. So the answer is both is best. Either will help you, and depending on the ailment. And to address the studies, there's actually quite a few studies, and we're compiling those where they have tested brown gas, not just the hydrogen as a drinking, which is, believe it or not, they've been studying hydrogen as drinking for over 40 years, but they didn't know it because they were calling it alkaline-rich water from ionizers. So the alkaline myth had all to do with hydrogen. In 2007, there was a scientist that did a full study, showing that if you take away from the alkaline water coming from these ionizers that they've been selling for 40 years, you take away the alkalinity, neutralize it, but leave in the hydrogen, the health benefits were maintained. But if you took away the hydrogen and left in the alkalinity, so the high pH, the health benefits disappeared. So this just blew the mind of these ionizer people, and they've been since trying to turn things around so that they're talking about how much hydrogen they're putting in their water now. And in the meantime, a bunch of other just pure hydrogen machines started to come on the market, and that was starting in about 2007. And then a virtual explosion. There's now thousands of studies having to do with hydrogen-rich water and actual inhaling, and some of those were actually with brown gas. So they're calling it hydrogen, 67% hydrogen, 33% oxygen mixture, and things like that. And there are oxyhydrogen machines out there as well that aren't making brown gas. But when you have a brown gas machine, which is specifically designed to make brown gas, and some of these were, like the Epoch machines I was telling you about in the Korean hydrogen bar, those were actual brown gas machines. Then the studies done with those machines are studies with brown gas, even though they're not calling it brown gas. And we're discovering that the brown gas has about a 30% more therapeutically efficacious result than just straight hydrogen. Even higher volumes of hydrogen. Like there's a machine out there that is medically certified in China. They don't sell the medical certification machine outside of China. They sell a copy, but it's not certified. Ones in China are making 3 liters per minute, so 3,000 milliliters per minute. And they get less effective than the 500 milliliters per minute of brown gas as far as the therapeutic efficacy.
Wow.
More is not better, but when they get out there and you're in the public, people honestly believe quite often more is better.
Yeah. Well, and you just addressed that too, I think, with when you look at, 4.5 ppm on a hydrogen water bottle, you're like, well, that's more. That's twice, almost twice as much. But I didn't realize you don't have that component of the electrons from the expanded water. That's a totally different conversation. So you can't, it's like apples to oranges. You couldn't really compare those. But the numbers are impressive, especially if it's like my mind and you don't know anything about any of that anyway, and you're just learning. So I wanted to touch back on the sleep because I know you and I talked about kind of starting slow with the inhaled hydrogen. And so if someone were going to go from that, like getting a machine, to sleeping with it, do they need to build up to that amount of hours like prior to just sleeping with it one night? Or I know my husband and he gets a little more time than I do because I make him do it in the morning and I'm at the gym. But anyway, so he does it at 2 times a day because he's a phone guy, so he can't really it's not practical for him to do it longer. And we've actually talked about ways that he could possibly take that with him, but it's just he's in and out of the vehicle so much. So this is what he can do, which is giving him about 2 hours total a day. But would you say that you could just start sleeping with it, or do you need to have some experience with the longer time frames before you did that?
Okay, well, the machine is designed with a timer, so you can adjust the amount of time. If you want to sleep with it, it will automatically shut it off. You don't have to get over and get up. Okay. But if you wanted to go for more time than an hour, then you set the timer. You push it. The ones we're selling now have a big button on the bottom. You just hold that one for 10 plus seconds, and it'll turn on the machine, and the machine will just keep running until low liquid level shuts it off.
Okay.
So in any case, and you don't ever want it to get that low anyway, there's a yellow refill light and stuff, but in any case, you can first start slower if necessary. And I say if necessary. There have been people, especially ones with serious ailments, don't seem to have a problem. They don't seem to have to build up. If you've got severe, like stage 4 cancer or something, it appears that the body doesn't have virtually any side effects when you start to inhale. Like for me, my side effect, my major one, was I didn't sleep that night. So I started inhaling in the morning. And then after a period of time, my body was used to the hydrogen, and I could inhale anytime, including sleeping.
Right.
And it makes no difference as far as that is concerned. But but some people get nauseous or even a headache if they inhale. And that's very, very rare. It's happened in thousands of ones, tens of thousands out there. I've heard it 5 times where people got a headache when they started to inhale. And the most recent one actually came with a diagnosis before she started to inhale that the reason she was getting headaches was because of issues in her brain. Oh. And this is what I was theorizing, is that what's happening is the body was trying to heal something in their head, and that's why they were getting a headache.
I remember that.
It's not necessarily comfortable.
Yeah.
And so the reason I say to start slow is to get the body used to having the gas in it. Just imagine if you did a month-long fast, 30 days of fasting, and then you sat down to a 7-course meal. You would definitely feel sick.
Yeah.
And the meal isn't any problem for you. It's a healthful meal. Maybe it's all organic, whatever. It's that your body isn't used to it. So that's why I tell people, I tell people generally to start slow, because the body needs to get used to it to not have this what I call negative weirdness. Okay, instead of side effects. However, some people can just start and they're fine. So it really depends on the person. So you could start at whatever you want and see how it works out. And if it's then just cut back. I say cut back by halves until you can handle it, till it's acceptable, whatever it is. And then you can build up from that as to whatever your body is being used to. So you can inhale the hydrogen at night as soon as you can do it. Generally speaking, if you can do an hour a day with no negative weirdness, then you're good to go. Okay. Your body is used to it. Okay. So those are some of the hints and tips as far as that goes.
Yeah, that's very helpful, because when something's new, you just feel a bit like, okay, what do I do with this? And I guess that leads to my next question that was asked, is if people can't find another way to get it in longer, and I think you've given us a huge jump start there of like just use it at sleeping. But one of the questions was, if you can only do an hour a day for whatever reason, would you say that that is enough? I mean, anything's helpful, I'm sure, but it would depend more on the health situation that you're dealing with, is my understanding, as to whether that would be as beneficial, of course, more so than not getting it at all. But do you feel like there's a minimum time that you would have to use hydrogen to get the benefits on any level, or do you think it's all good, just the longer the better? So
the longer the better generally, because if your body doesn't need it, it'll just breathe it out. It's not an issue as far as that's concerned. I inhale at least 8 hours a day, even though I'm now much healthier than I was, because I had such great benefits, and I get these testimonials every day. So I do at least 8 hours.
Okay.
Based on what my customers have been telling me, I would say if you're a healthy person, generally a healthy person, even an athlete can benefit by having more than an hour. But generally I'd say people should have at least an hour, mainly because they're not getting the nutrition they need. I'd say 99% or better of the people in the world, the whole world these days, are hydrogen deficient. Because our environment, the foods that we eat, the antibiotics that we take, the glyphosate that's in the foods, the artificial sweeteners, the various chemicals that we inhale and ingest with food, herbicides, pesticides, all these things kill those bacteria that help break the carbons and hydrogens off the hydrocarbon food and give you the hydrogen that you need. Because we can't inhale the hydrogen like we inhale oxygen from the air. This is a nitrogen-oxygen mixture, right? So the only place we can get our hydrogen from is from water, which takes a lot of energy to break a hydrogen-oxygen bond. So generally the body doesn't get it from water. There is water that's produced as a side effect of what they call metabolic water in the body from oxygen and hydrogen combined. But it's nice to get that hydrogen in you first instead of having to break it apart and put it back together. That's a very inefficient way to do it. So we get it from our food. We get most of our hydrogen from our food. And if our digestive systems aren't working properly, and most people's are not, then you're not getting the hydrogen that you need. So you're actually eating the food that you need, but you're being malnourished. You're not getting the nutrition from that food. It's just going out the backside of you. So if you inhale for at least an hour a day, because if you think about it, most people eat for an hour a day. You've got your breakfast, lunch, and supper. And if you add up those times when you're actually ingesting food, it comes to about an hour a day. So if you inhale for an hour a day, you get about the hydrogen that you need for maintenance, in my opinion.
Okay, right. Well, thank you. That's a very good, and you answered some of my other questions, George, before I even got to them. So that's okay though. I'm gonna kind of recap one of them. So you mentioned that foods were one of the places that we would have gotten hydrogen, because that's been a question too. Is of course, why do we need to add this in if it's so important? Don't we already have the mechanism to do that? And of course, I addressed that from your last interview too. That we're just not living in the same world anymore. And I think, unfortunately, I couldn't find any studies on the herbicide glyphosate and the connection to how it would break down hydrogen in the body, because I'm pretty convinced that the gut, disturbance that happens from glyphosate is so huge that I can't imagine that it isn't disassembling a lot of those antioxidant abilities that our body has. So unfortunately, that study is apparently yet to be done, because they haven't done on specific herbicides and things to say, okay, how much? Because I know glyphosate is able to chelate copper 1 billion times faster than our body would normally use it. And so when that study came out, it's like, oh my goodness, when you think about the importance of copper being taken up in the cell, and of course coupled with hydrogen to make ceruloplasma, and then you think about something that can literally disarm at a level that we've never experienced, just copper. I mean, just one mineral that's the catalyst for mitochondrial function. And that just made me wonder, I just would love to know how fast is the rate of hydrogen used up when it's under an attack like that. So just questions that would be good to have some answers on, and someone much smarter than me is going to need to do those studies, but I would like to read them. On that, with the hydrogen foods, I know there are lower deuterium foods, and of course those are foods that are going to be lower in sugar and carbohydrates, and processed foods and those kind of things are going to be high in deuterium. Do you feel like there would also be a list of hydrogen rich foods that you could kind of correlate with a deuterium list? Would they they overlap one another as far as the foods that are lowest in deuterium are also going to be your highest hydrogen foods? Or is that something you've ever kind of walked into with like which foods are the most beneficial to eat? I found it interesting that the lowest deuterium foods listed were the foods that, of course, metabolically are the healthiest for us to have. But I didn't know if you'd ever kind of tapped into that or not.
I rubbed shoulders with it a little bit in passing in some of the things I was doing. So yes, when you're trying to lower your deuterium, and your audience is probably familiar with why people want to have lower deuterium levels, or why the deuterium levels in our, not really? Okay.
I think it's just a new, we're going to tackle those topics, but no, I think it's fairly new to
so
my
let's
listeners.
do a quick recap on what the big deal is about DDW, deuterium depleted water. Mm-hmm. Okay, first of all, what is deuterium? Deuterium is hydrogen. Okay, the molecule of hydrogen has an electron and a proton. But if you add a neutron, it becomes heavy hydrogen. And if you have, and then it's called D instead of H. And they call that deuterium. So you can have mixtures of water that have DHO, or first of all, it's HHO, or DHO, or DDO. Okay, and the DDO is heavy water, considered to be heavy water. And it exists at about 5,000 to 1 in environment, or if I'm remembering my statistics correctly, about 158 parts per million in regular water. Okay? The deuterium, the reason it's important is they discovered, for example, that it dampens nuclear reactions. So they use heavy water to help dampen in nuclear reactors so that they don't just automatically burst and explode. Well, it does a similar thing in our bodies, affecting our metabolism. If you have too much deuterium, you need some, by the way. It's one of those things, a little is good, too much is not good. So you need a balance, and you need some deuterium in your body to help control your metabolism. But if you have too much, your metabolism starts to shut down. It just dampens it, the whole thing. Those are really what deuterium is, and why you would want to have less, because we're building up too much in our bodies. So our bodies are like a bucket with a hole in it, and different people have a different size hole, but if you're filling a bucket with water, and you're filling it faster than it's draining out the hole in the bottom, then you're going to have higher levels of deuterium. So if you start pouring in less deuterium, that's what the deuterium depleted water or deuterium depleted foods tends to do, then your bucket can lower faster than it's coming in, and you can end up with a lower deuterium in your body. This is how I explain all this stuff so far. So to answer your question, there are foods that produce more hydrogen. And if you look in the medical literature, when they're testing the gut health, they give people some of these kind of foods. I forget exactly what it is, but I know it exists, to get the blood saturated with hydrogen. And so they have excess hydrogen coming out their mouth, which they can measure. So they know they put a certain amount of this food in the gut, and they can measure a certain amount of hydrogen coming out, so they can know how well the gut responded. Mm-hmm. And so there are tests out there that do that. And whatever kinds of food fit in that category would fit with what you're talking about. Other than that, I don't know where the overlap is, or any particular thing. I tend to avoid simple carbohydrates because they just really don't do anything for you. Like Oprah said once, everything white. Just avoid it. And it just occurs to me that's probably a racist statement these days. Basic. Okay. White foods. All right. So potatoes, cake, sugar, all these things. Honey is an excellent sweetener, which gives you more nutrition than it gives you problems, things like that. Also, a bunch of natural antibiotics that don't kill off the bad things. Gives your body the boost. We want to boost our own immune systems because our immune systems are smart enough to kill off the bad pathogens and keep the good ones. I think they did a study that shows there's more not us in us than there is of us. We are really dependent on the microbiome, starting from our skin right through to everything in our body. We need those not us in us synergistically to live healthy. So I can't say which foods. I'm unfortunate. That's a really good question. I'll kind of try to pay attention to it in the future. In the meantime, there were a couple other things that I was reminded of from our past conversation already in this podcast. Your husband does a lot of in and out of vehicle travel, and I travel with my AquaCure. Now, so I have it in the back seat, and every time I sit down and I just put on my cannulas, it's another way I can get more time in. So it's just another tip out there. You don't want to fill the jar, the drinking water jar, with a 90% at that point. I go with like 80%, because if it sloshes around, you can get some water up your nose. I've heard you could experience it too.
Yeah, we've done that. I did that one time when it kind of tipped over and then we turned it back up and I was like, oh wow, but it was fine. It was actually, it woke me up because it was right before bed. I was like, that was interesting, but yeah, it didn't hurt at all. It was fine.
Yeah.
Well, and I'll have to pass that. I think just the sleep.
So the other thing is if you're sleeping, a lot of people's mouth drops open when they're sleeping. So then they're inhaling through their mouth and they're not getting as much hydrogen through here as necessary. They make fairly comfortable chin straps that you can put on that hold your chin up so you can keep your mouth shut when you're inhaling. I thought I'd throw that in there as well.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually.
And they make silicone cannulas that are really soft, and so they don't kind of press into your skin when you're sleeping on your side or something.
Okay.
So I just thought I'd toss those hints and tips in there as well.
Well, thank you. And I wanted to kind of mention, so deuterium being heavy water and hydrogen being light water, to really oversimplify that probably, but just for the purpose of the conversation. I know the mitochondrial change in a cell when there's deuterium, which is why people who have high deuterium levels often have, chronic illness. And so when we check deuterium levels, you're expecting to see a much higher level. So like you said, you don't want to see a really low level because then you get, oxidation and you get some other things because it does have a purpose. But in that, I think the deuterium really weighing down the mitochondria of the cell so that hydrogen would do the exact opposite of that. And so deuterium, being able to help it or cause a cell to have rust or oxidation, just like you would think about with iron, that overload is going to cause the cell to not function properly. And I think so much in what we do in naturopathic care is we try to support the systems in the body, but I think we've overlooked the cellular level, that you have to change something in the mitochondria in order for the messaging to be different. And so when you have immune system errors like cancer or autoimmune conditions like lupus or fibromyalgia, you have to be able to change the messaging system. And that has to happen within that center in the mitochondria. And deuterium, of course, weighing that process down. So kind of like throwing sand in a vehicle, in my mind, it's just like it still may get the job done temporarily, but it's going to be a terrible outcome. And hydrogen, for me, is like it's clearing that up. It's giving your body that advantage that you don't have when you have all of this deuterium available, which is why eating well matters so much. And I think a lot of times in practice, people are looking for one thing that can fix everything. And I will say your machines probably came closer in my mind of skepticism than anything else has, but I think it's because of the mechanism that it can actually change how a cell functions. And that is, ever since you and I had the first interview, I was overwhelmed before that, but then it was like this information where it's like, I think that you have tapped into something that can change a cell. And in my mind, unless a cell is healthy, you can't get well. And there are no amount of medications or supplements or food or diet or exercise. All those things are wonderful, but if they're not getting in and out of the cell, those messengers cannot carry through, then it doesn't cure someone. And so to me, this is probably the most exciting thing, is to say, it's the God molecule, and I just think that's beautiful, because deuterium being this heavy molecule that really weighs us down, and of course you could spiritualize that, but then God has this perfect molecule that balances that out, and we don't have access to it. And I think in our world, food isn't enough anymore. Supplements aren't enough, because we have so many things coming at us from so many different levels that it takes a biohack. It's going to take something to change how a cell behaves. And this is it. To me, it's life-changing because it's cell-changing. And if you really dive down into like the deuterium list of low deuterium foods are all going to be metabolically supportive. And so when you think about, bringing in simple carbohydrates and all those things, well, there's a lot of inflammation in the cell when you do that, because of course they're very high in deuterium and you're creating a sluggish cell. But with hydrogen being able to, be coupled with good nutrition, George, it's just amazing. I don't think you could ever talk about it enough. I don't think I could ever tell people about it enough, because for me, me, in order to actually help people heal, the cell has to be fixed. And this is an amazing opportunity to do that. So that wasn't a question. That was me just like in awe of God and how He's created us, you know.
You're absolutely correct. And before we go, I wanted to point out something that we're already doing, and I've been promising for years. And people have there's a way to make deuterium depleted water with the AquaCure, and I've already been doing it. And now I'm actually having to call it deuterium deleted water. So it's still DDW, but we just came up with this because when we're sending samples out that are made from an AquaCure that can be operated in anyone's home, they test against samples that are 5 parts per million deuterium in the testing labs, and they can't. There's not enough deuterium to test against a 5 parts per million deuterium sample, which is the lowest that they can test for in their sampling machines. So we're calling it deuterium deleted water, and it'll be sometime in 2025. We will come out with the deuterium deleted water apparatus so that people can make their own deuterium deleted water in their own homes, and it'll attach to every AquaCure ever made. We built them from the beginning. I designed them from the beginning to be able to support these additional functionalities that we're going to be rolling out. So anyone who's buying one now, don't worry. With the additional apparatus that'll be coming out, you'll be able to attach directly to the AquaCure you have now. And there's no other machines on the world, because no one has, since 1986, experience like I do, designing and understanding what's actually going on with these things.
Wow. And I want to be first on the list for that too. And I know in that it's amazing to have one machine that can do not only the hydrogen water with the extra molecule water, but then also having the ability to inhale, and now that. I mean, it's the perfect machine. So I hope it's like January of 2025, George.
In January, we should be rolling out the microbubbler apparatus. My wife voted to have that first. So.
Yeah. so that's going to be available.
And she takes as many as 2 baths a day because she just loves the feel of the spa-like of all the hydrogen in the water.
And she's just putting the tube right now. This will be where you just drop the tube.
Right now you can put the tube in the water and it'll be hydrogen-rich water in your bathtub. But it's only a certain amount, because you're looking into what I have to call interstitial spaces in between the water molecules. You get a little hydrogen molecule, and it's still transparent solution. It's only 1.6 parts per million if the water's at room temperature. So now the reason the water bottles can do it at a higher parts per million is because they pressurize it. They actually seal it. I've seen water bottles that could go up to 10 parts per million. Wow. But again, getting back to your bathtub is at atmospheric pressure, and it's warm. The warmer the water, the less hydrogen it holds. So what we do is make micro bubbles, and it's like a fog. And now, right now, when you put the bubbler in the water, most of the gas comes up and escapes in big bubbles, right? Well, this thing fogs it, and the water holds the fog. So you have this foggy water, which has got 100 times more hydrogen in it than just the regular bubbling can do. And the therapeutic spa that you get out of that is just amazing.
Oh, I'm excited about that one too. Not as much as the deuterium depleted, but that's awesome. And I know you need to go, George, and I want to respect your time, but I did want to mention that you shared a link with me for Jaylee's story on the last interview, and it was just beautiful to see that and to see her healing story with using, my understanding was a change in nutrition and the AquaCure machine that she was loaned, correct? That was
yes, the original one. Her father or future father-in-law, I think it was her father. It's hard for me to tell from the stories, and I haven't confirmed the actual data. But anyway, a man in her life was wanting her to be well, and I'm just going to say her father. And he managed to find a distributor in Australia who was renting AquaCure machines. And this particular distributor had his machines all rented out, so he rented his own personal machine to this man who was trying to save the life of his daughter, who was sent home with weeks to live because she absolutely refused chemo and radiation. And the doctors literally told her, you might as well just step off a high-rise building and go splat on the pavement because you're going to die about that fast anyway. So and save yourself some grief. Anyway, a year later, after having rented that machine, and about 6 months into it, she bought her own machine and gave the rental back. But it was lent in a way because it was the guy's own personal machine. Him and his own family didn't have one for that period of time.
Right.
And the year later, you saw the video testimonial. It's heart.
Oh yeah.
Can't call it rending, but exploding. She calls it ugly crying, and she's showing the paper that shows she's 100% cancer free.
Wow.
From a cancer that the type of cancer she had, she was they considered 2 cancer clinics, one in California, one in Australia, said she was top 5 in the world. Like it was bad. It was in the top 5 of badness. Yeah. And a year later, no cancer. That's God-given miracle, and she is online telling people about this, and so it's just helping other people so that it spreads. Every pebble in the water has its ripples, and it's one of the reasons I get up in the morning.
Well, I think, to say for you, it's like this is why I do what I do. For you would be amazing that you can see those kind of results and change someone's life. I mean, that's amazing. And her story was, I enjoyed listening, but of course I cried because it was so sincere, and she literally had been given a miracle. But I think when you think about hydrogen, like you described it earlier, it knows where to go. It knows what to do. And it's like because of the intelligence and of course our creator, that it's like it just put it in. It knows what to do, which is amazing to me, because when you work with people like I do that do choose chemotherapy, and how brutal it is, and it's not anything like that story a lot of times, even with the harshness of the treatment. You're being poisoned. And so it's definitely a hard thing. I work with patients on both sides where we're seeing them just nutritionally through that time while they're doing treatment, or they've chosen to do without, conventional treatment. And I will say that it's very difficult, but for me, this is something that she didn't have to endure any of those things, and her body was able to not be poisoned, but to get better, which is what we're supposed to be about in this country, is curing people. But we won't talk about that right now. So anyway.
It's ironic that the American Cancer Society started to eliminate cancer, and it's now so much more worse than it ever was.
Yeah, one in 3. Yeah, and projected to be much worse. But I'm hoping that a lot of people will get AquaCure machines, and that won't even be an issue, and they'll be made available to people who are working with clients and patients, and it'll be a revolution, and I think it'll be welcomed completely. Well, I want to finish up with my husband's little personal journey with just several months now. I think we've only had the machine, I don't even know, to be honest, George, maybe 5 months, 6 months. And again, he's the one that's had the most time with it, even though it's been a very small amount. The other day, my daughter had a lymph node swollen, and she was just like, she's like, I always have these big lymph nodes. And he reached up behind his neck and he said, I've had this one we know of at least 15 years, because, he was diagnosed with leukemia 7 years ago. But he'd had this lymph node that was just, if he turned his neck, you could visibly, it was that big. And he just felt there, and he was like, I don't have that lymph node there anymore. Like, it's completely normalized. And so I got so excited going, if you're he's had something change internally that was so externally, seen. What's going on in his body right now, which is amazing to me, because we do twice a year, we do a check where he calls it, I hold my breath twice a year. He gets to breathe is where you do testing to make sure you're still in undetectable status. And I'm just like, it's going to be amazing to me. And my daughter, one of them, the one that was working on my tech support in here, she said, I'm so excited for Dad to get his next labs drawn, because, just seeing that was like, I can't wait. I'm really excited. But thank you so much for your time, George, and for answering all my questions that I have written down, except I think I could do this for 20 hours, but I'm not going to do that to you. So if we get some more questions, maybe you and I can schedule something else again. But I just can't tell you how much we've benefited in our family from this, and then also being able to offer people something that goes beyond the supplements and the meds and all these things, to say this can help your body heal. It's just a beautiful gift. So thank you very much.
You're very welcome, and I hope we help a lot more people. And if you share the link with me as well, I'll post it so that we can have those ripples spread out even further. Because you're not the only one that has questions. And I love answering questions, by the way. So just as many as anyone wants to post out there or ask you, and we can answer as many people at the same time.
Yeah.
Answering one time to answer questions from 100 people would be great.
Yes, and as you said that, I'm going to take you up on the last one. The splitter. When you're using that for two people, the question was asked that if, the BMI is different, do you go to the lesser BMI when you use the splitter, or does it matter because it actually is splitting the amount, or would you just go, tell me how that would work. Would you set it, like for my husband, for example, would we stay on my setting, or because there's quite a bit of discrepancy in the two as far as what we would have a normal BMI, so.
My recommendation, that's a good, excellent question. My recommendation is to keep it, for the short answer, is to keep it on the lower person's setting.
Okay.
Now the reason why is because it's a gas, and gases always flow to the path of least resistance. So almost 100% of the gas will flow to the path of least resistance, unless there's a lot of pressure, and then it comes from both. Like for example, if you put these cannula in a glass of water, you'll see the gas come out only one or the other of the little nozzles there. And it's not that it isn't coming out both when I'm inhaling like this. It's because water has a lot of resistance, so the gas is coming out the nozzle with the least resistance.
Okay.
So you can verify, and we do recommend people put it in water to make sure that you're getting the gas out, because there could be a gas leak somewhere down the line and you're not getting your gas. But that's an example. So getting back to the splitter, here we're going into open air, and at times I'm inhaling, so I'm actually creating a bit of a vacuum. So the pressure difference and path of least resistance is going to bring the gas to me. And usually the other person is not inhaling, or like in between breaths, or exhaling. And when you're exhaling, you're actually blowing, so it creates a bit of a pressure. So one person is exhaling while the other person is inhaling. 100% of the gas is going to go to the person that's inhaling.
Okay.
And you don't want your gas to go up into that percentage to go up into that explosive range. Okay. Now, if it was the other way around, it's no big deal. But trying to protect the smaller person to make sure that they don't get a combustible mixture. Now, people breathe at different rates, and there'll be times when people are both inhaling at the same time or both exhaling at the same time. And so that when you're splitting it, you don't necessarily get all of the gas that you would if you were just individually inhaling.
Okay.
But the body is more resilient than that, and so if there's a few breaths where you're not getting quite as much, and then other breaths where you're getting more, it'll just even out in your bloodstream. So it's not an issue. So people can split between two and be pretty good.
Okay, thank you so much, George. Thank you so much for listening. If this podcast inspired you or encouraged you in some way, please leave us a review or share this episode with a friend. If you need help connecting the dots of your own health journey, I would love to help you with that. You can reach me via the link below to set up a one-on-one consultation. You can also connect with us by joining our free Facebook community, which is linked below, or at healthywithhappysperling.com. Until next time.